our webinar discussing the launch of the data science and data literacy model learning progressions um, and their new home on datasciencelearning.org and our new official website and our future work. So while we wait for more people to join Zoom, we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. So if you want to share your name, organization, and why you're interested in joining the event today, we'd love to hear from you. We'll get started in just a minute or so. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Zarek Drost. I'm the Executive Director of Data Science for Everyone. And we're just really excited to show you what we've been working on really the past year or past 2 years. And really just thrilled to have you all with us. Okay, so Data Science for Everyone is a national initiative working to advance data science and data literacy education into every K-12 classroom. As some of you know with our backstory, we were originally catalyzed from a Freakonomics podcast, and the push for data literacy and data science education has since become a national movement with really over 3,000 education leaders and now 35 states participating across the country. We currently work on four big things. So that's raising awareness, gathering, catalyzing classroom resources, community building, and then finally policies relates to data science education. Um, we are excited to back the slide up with some action, highlighting some phenomenal coding resources that you all be able to bring back in your classrooms, as well as building community with like-minded educators to see the value in enhancing data literacy education for their students. And if you want to go to the next slide, there you all have our pillars of main work. Yeah, and then if you want to go to the community standards. Just want to, as we welcome you all to today's discussion and our webinar today, just want to remind you all that we welcome coalition members of all different backgrounds and levels of experience in data science education. And to create room for a healthy and engaging debate and conversation, we've established a code of conduct that creates an environment of respect, inclusion, and effective communication. And you can learn more about our community standards, including how to report any violations that might occur on our website. And we'll drop a link to that in the chat now so you have access to it. Um, Also, as we go through the presentation today, please make sure you're muted so we don't have any background noise with our speakers are presenting. If you have any questions at all, be sure to drop them in the chat. So we'll have at least we plan for some time for questions at the end. And then an exciting update, and what's up on the screen right now, if you're headed to the NCTM annual conference in Atlanta next week, for those of you who don't know, it's Math Week, and so there's a number of overlapping national math conferences in Atlanta. We would love to see you in person. And the QR code that's up on the screen, as well as the link that Shay just dropped in the chat, is our free to attend community meetup. And so if you're excited to meet other data science enthusiasts in person, swap ideas, and hopefully recharge after a full day of conference sessions, well, we'd love to see you there. It'll be all over free drinks and snacks. So scan the QR code below or use the chat that Shay shared to RSVP. So now, without further ado, I'd love to introduce the other people that will be speaking with me tonight to help introduce the new framework. And so we have Samantha Leave, our policy director, former State Board of Illinois mathematics specialist, and also former high school mathematics teacher in Illinois and Indiana. And then Hannah Kurzweil, our community manager, who also has a fantastic suite of classroom experience in Colorado, has been with our team for the past many months, helping build out teacher community resources, and also offers regular office hours. And we'll share those at the end. And as a group, we're really excited to share what we've created, what we think the learning progressions framework will hopefully serve, and then where we are hoping to take this project next. In order to fully understand and implement and consider taking on these learning progressions for data science and data literacy, today we're going to walk through the framework and talk about how they are developed, show you the resources that are available to you as of today, and then also discuss what's coming down the road and what next steps are available to really help drive the movement forward. And we're hoping that this will, provide a launch pad for future initiatives at the state and district and school level around the country. Um, so first up, how did we come up with and develop the new national framework for K-12 data science and what motivated their creation? I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next few slides. So first, starting really narrowly in the realm of mathematics and thinking about K-12 math education. I do want to say that we think that the model progressions have implications across school subjects, and we're going to talk about in a little bit how this work will start to create content connections between math, computer science, science, social studies, even ELA. And so we'll get to that soon. But first, as a teaser question, wondering, and if you all can throw this in the chat if you'd like. Is there a math skill that you wish you had learned before you graduated? Um, this question we've been interested in for a number of years. And it turns out that there's actually some survey work out there to show what the broader community and really the broader US education world would have liked to see in their own curriculum. So this came from the Gallup team recently. It's a new survey that was conducted over the past year and it was released just this past summer. And it asked, what is the value of math in work and life? And what math skills would our students and education stakeholders across the country wish they would have seen more of? Um, and financial math took number one, so such as personal finances, budgeting, and accounting at 29% of respondents, which they wish they would have seen more of those skills emphasized in middle or high school. Data science was number two. And that includes, skills such as managing spreadsheets or large amounts of information. At least that's how it's defined in the survey. But you can see that the skills underneath that, right? Software, using a program to process or manipulate data or apply functions. Programming, using a coding language like Python or writing instructions for a computer. Statistics, solve a problem in multiple variables to account for. Create tables and charts of data. And then I think you could also make an argument that even the financial math category all touches on the ability to apply mathematics to the real world and interact with digital data. It is the skills around data analysis, modeling, statistics, and probability, and then integrating those things with technology. And that showed up in the top 10 skills that Americans at large. And this is, former high school graduates, but across different post-secondary pathways, had emphasized and what they wish they would have liked to see more of in their curriculum. Um, but it's not only the case that Gallup is telling us this. If you also look just at the broader economy, we're seeing these skills show up across sectors. Burning Glass Institute report from last year showed that as of the year 2024, around 1 in 4 jobs across the entire economy emphasized at least one data science skill in their job solicitations, right? This is showing up in the language that we use in that skills and competency section when anyone was applying to a job. And that graphic you're seeing there is both the national average at the very bottom right, but it ranges between about 30% in the District of Columbia at the very top, and then about 15% in Vermont at the bottom. National average being around 22% of job listings have some sort of data science skill showing up in them. And so we know that employers have been asking for this for a while, and that demand is only increasing as AI becomes increasingly part of everyday life in the professional workplace. Um, and we know that students are going to be better equipped to deal with, whatever the next AI tool is, whatever the next emerging technology tool is, if they have data skills under their belt and they're ready to transfer that between tools and context. Hannah, if you want to go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the community-driven response to these changes. And so back in I think 2024 and then 2023, we worked with and really had leadership from national K-12 teacher associations. And first, there was a joint position statement that came out from five K-12 associations representing mathematics, science, statistics, social studies, and computer science. Um, that said that data science should be and can be a subject that bridges disciplines and that should be introduced and taught across the K-12 curriculum to help develop informed users of data and data literate students by the time they graduate from high school. And then separate from that, NCTM also came out with a position statement a few months later, saying that data science high school courses should be and can be part of a students' graduation pathway as they pursue higher level mathematics in high school and beyond. And so, the K-12, broader K-12 community was telling us this. There was a clear call to action from the teacher community. And so we then got together and said, okay, well, how do we make this actionable? How do we get this into practice? Um, which allowed us to give us a green light and clear motivation to say we need to take this to the next level of detail and think about what do grade by grade target learning outcomes and target learning expectations look like for data literacy and data science. And so that's what we have been working to build over the past 2 years. And really, Data Science for Everyone, along with the Concord Consortium, served as a facilitator of this process. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the community input that went into this work in a moment. But our goal was to do a couple things. We wanted to provide a roadmap, but make it flexible. And so we have mapped what I think amounts to kind of the universe of K-12 data science and data literacy, age-appropriate learning targets, concept by concept, grade level by grade level, as a student progresses through their K-12 experience. What do we think are age-appropriate learning goals for students as they move through learning about data? Um, the second goal was to just make those expectations really clear and written down somewhere. But I think more broadly, we were interested in not only anchoring on what employers are looking for and not only responding to emerging technology, but we really wanted to emphasize critical thinking skills, durable skills that will stick with a student, and the ability to transfer between technology tools, between careers, and between life contexts, right? We know that all these things have daily life and civic implications as well. So we wanted to ensure that there was a really robust suite of critical thinking habits deeply integrated into the progressions. And so if you get time to play with the new model framework and get to go through the website, which we'll show here in a minute, you'll see that those critical thinking skills have been dialed up and emphasized throughout in tandem with some of the technical skills around statistical tests or coding or that the data moves like data merges or data cleaning that pair alongside sort of the logical thinking and argumentation skills that come with a data science education that is ideally holistic. So let's move on to the next one, just to talk a little bit about the process that we got here. And I won't go too deep on this because I want to just give the highlights. Chances are, if you're joining the webinar, you might have actually been involved in this process in some way. We engaged, I would say, at least over 1,000 people in the development, community refinement, and several rounds of voting that went into building the framework. We started out with focus groups that aggregated contributions from educators in math, science, social studies, computer science, ELA. It was really a very cross-subject effort. Education researchers, policymakers at the state level, a number of curriculum designers and folks who've been building courses and lesson plans and software solutions in this landscape, and then as well as students. We had a fantastic student group contribute to the content goals and learning experience that was ultimately emphasized in this framework. And we thought it was really important, especially with how fast technology is moving, but also given just how much technology has shifted the daily experience of students and of our young people, that they had a seat at the table and were contributing directly to the framework and giving feedback to the rest of us. And so we're really happy to elevate their experiences. We also had industry voices, and it was not just in technology or finance sectors where a little bit more data skills and AI skills are a little bit more obviously showing up, but we also had representation from agriculture, retail. We had folks from finance and tech, but then we had really I think a broad swath of industries to give us that multi-sector perspective. And finally, we did a couple rounds of voting. The initial focus groups were asked, if they're a hypothetical high school exam given in 2030, what should be covered? But then once we had some of those initial learning targets defined, we brought digital ballots and we opened this up on our website. And we also went to many, many teacher conferences where folks are able to fill out and vote on what learning outcomes do they care all students should walk away with by the time they graduate from high school. And are there learning outcomes that are important, but maybe aren't rising to the level of we should require this in every state standard? And so it was really helpful to get that community feedback. It also just made for a fun and much more engaging process. We had about 800 participants from all 50 states shape the vision for the progressions and where we were dialing up versus dialing down certain learning goals. And because we made this process so interdisciplinary, we also were able to get to, I thought, what was a really powerful conclusion from this process, which is that we're able to identify similar ideas that relate to data, statistical reasoning, in data literacy, but from multiple perspectives. And so if you take just an example concept of generalization, right, and assess whether data generalizes or not in context, we are able to capture this from multiple perspectives. And so if we move through here, we'll see an example from science teachers at the top. So they talked about generalizations and limitations that can be drawn from an experiment or a lab in a classroom setting. Policymakers asked, can we develop a clear understanding of what data and data does not tell us for a decision that might be on the docket, right, or a piece of legislation that they're examining. CS teachers, you describe this concept as interpreting a claim made using data or artifacts derived from data, and what can be generalized or not from smart sensors or data pipelines or other pathways for data collection that a computer scientist would likely be involved in helping create and build. And then finally, industry was very explicit, and they just told us hone a BS meter and identify bias and whether one conclusion in one context can generalize to another or not. Just as a thinking habit, as sort of an immediate reaction, as a sniff test. But all these ideas come together and are ultimately describing the same idea, just using slightly different language. And so that was a really powerful validation process because we were able to see some of these same themes showing up across the community. Okay. We also did a lot of feedback, and we had a lot of feedback, got a lot of great ideas from the broader community, and there's many rounds of editing. And so we surfaced about 220 comments after we had a writing sprint sit down and chart out grade level expectations span by span. We then did around a community review at our annual or semi-annual DSE K-12 national conference. And that process through a also another voting tool surfaced about another 177 comments that we were able to incorporate and revise into the model progressions. Then we also benefited from some assistance from student achievement partners who helped us look at coherency as it aligns to existing state standards around the country in math, science, and other subjects. And then finally, the original experts that we convened gave us some additional feedback as we were trying to pool all of this input together to make a coherent framework. And so we're really grateful for the broader community for their engagement and energy in helping make this product better. And finally, we get to the real framework itself. And we're going to talk about the major strands and the major components of that as we go here. But just to give you a little bit of preview, so there are five major strands in the data science, data literacy framework for K-12. It starts out with data dispositions and responsibility. That is the core sort of set of habits of mind, dispositions, and regular practices that we want students incorporating, exercise after exercise. Then the other four strands, which are data creation and curation, data analysis and modeling, interpreting problems and results, and then finally visualization and communication of data. Those are like the techniques and the technical skills and some of the thinking frameworks that enact the data science process. All these come together to form an investigation cycle. And I think one thing that our framework writers really wish to emphasize in the process, and one thing that we would like to continue to communicate, is that we have built the learning progressions in a way that feels very reminiscent of most state standards. They are bullet-based learning statements and outcomes, targets grade by grade. But there is a process to this, and ideally, when students have their classroom experience, they are working through a full investigation cycle not only that goes from data collection to modeling that data to interpreting their initial results to then sharing it with others, but there's a lot of back and forth. There should ideally be really a profound amount of iteration between these steps as students work through the respective stages of a data analysis project. So that was my very brief intro here. I'm going to hand it to Sam to talk a little bit about how this can then translate into state and district support.
Hello, everyone. So you might be wondering how exactly are you supposed to be using these learning progressions? Well, we designed these explicitly with your needs in mind. We know that a top-down, one-size-fits-all model doesn't work. Each state educational agency, school district, and teacher is working with unique graduation requirements and existing standards and possibly different strategic priorities. Learning progressions is a strategic menu of options. You can select the concepts that align with the goals you've already identified, and this gives you the autonomy to implement in the way that best serves your educators. Next slide. Thank you. As we mentioned, the learning progressions can be viewed as a menu of options, selecting concepts that meet what your state or district identifies as priorities. So we're going to kind of walk through that a little bit here as an example. Imagine your priority is to incorporate data science into your computer science courses rather than creating a separate course. In that case, you would go through and prioritize concepts that are directly relevant to a computer science context. So for instance, if we're just working from the top down, A21, data use risks and benefits. This helps teach ethics in AI and software development. Another concept you might select is B11, data cleaning, because every computer science professional knows real world data is really messy. C15 is missingness, and this helps to teach students how to handle incomplete data sets programmatically. And C25, machine learning, as a direct and engaging application. We're not limiting it to these, and you can select many, many more. But this is just one example. If your priority was social studies, you'd select a completely different set of concepts. To ensure that these learning progressions are not just practical, but also grounded in academic rigor, we've created a comprehensive reference list. For example, the vast majority of competencies, we've linked them directly to major educational frameworks and educational research papers, such as the GAZE 2 framework, which many of you are familiar with, the Big Five ideas from AI for K-12, and the data science course framework from Data Center. The master reference list can be found through the QR code on the bottom left. We also know that the learning progressions of 5 strands broken into 18 substrands and then 83 concepts can feel really overwhelming. So let me be very clear from the start, we do not expect everyone to implement all 83 concepts. The learning progressions is a comprehensive map, but your journey can be a curated tour. To make this actionable from day one, we engage directly with our stakeholders, educators, state leads, industry partners to identify what they saw as the most critical concepts. The result was a curated list of the top 25 priority concepts. We strongly suggest using the stakeholders' vetted top 25 list as your jumping off point. It's a consensus view on where to start, and from here, you have full flexibility to adjust, add, subtract to perfectly fit your student specific needs. And
Yeah.
I will turn it over to Hannah.
Thanks, Sam. So, like Sam was saying, looking through these for the first time can be quite overwhelming. And we know that simply creating a framework doesn't inherently mean that systems level change is going to occur. So that's why we were pretty passionate that our work didn't just stop there. So let me give you a scenario, one that's a little bit near and dear to my own heart. You're a middle school math teacher and you've just heard about these amazing learning progressions. You're excited about data science. You've looked through some materials. Maybe you've even attended a webinar or a workshop. But then Monday morning comes around and you're staring at your lesson plans and you're wondering, how exactly do I turn students will understand data collection methods into an activity that my seventh graders are going to engage with? Well, you know that on one hand, we have these researched, validated learning progressions, and they're really solid. But on the other side, we have these classroom realities and, competing amounts of brain space and time space in the classroom. We know that teachers need lesson plans for next week's class, while administrators are also asking for measurable outcomes to look at, and students are hoping for engaging, meaningful experience when it comes to their own learning. And that's why we decided that we really needed to build a bridge. Not just any bridge, but a bridge that addresses three critical areas. The first is translating the learning outcomes into classroom activities. It's one thing to say students can use statistical variability to describe data, but it's another thing entirely to design an activity where eighth graders are collecting data about like maybe their school's recycling habits and discovering the variation and variability from week to week. That translation process is what we found is where educators typically get stuck, especially if data science is new to them. Second, is building teacher confidence and competency. And let's be honest, many, I might even hazard saying most, of our incredible educators out there today didn't learn data science when they were in school. It wasn't a buzzword, it wasn't really a thing, it was probably new. I certainly didn't take any data science courses, or even have any science modules within my coursework. And so now we have teachers being asked to teach something that they might not feel confident in themselves. And we can't just hand you a framework and say, go teach data science. We really have to be along in that journey for building that confidence and competency. And then third is the practical implementation support. So when you understand the concepts and you're feeling a little bit more confident, it's still really helpful for teachers whose time is very limited to have some actual tools. You might need lesson plans that you know work, data sets that you know are age appropriate and engaging for your content. You might need assessment rubrics. You need to know what to do when the technology doesn't work or when a student asks a question that you're not sure how to answer. So when I'm talking about building a bridge, I'm talking about creating this foundation of curating the resources that take a learning progression, like students will evaluate data sources for their bias, and showing you exactly how to do that through a lesson where students compare weather reports from different news stations during a hurricane season. And we're talking about professional development that doesn't just explain what data science is, but actually walks teachers through implementing it step by step with support and community along the way. And we're talking about practical tools that make Monday morning lesson planning not quite so overwhelming. So while we talk about this bridge, there's a lot of gaps that we had to address. And that was kind of exciting for us, right? We've identified some problems, some gaps, but we continued to work on creating solutions for those. So what you're about to see isn't just another educational website. This is one of our answers, we hope, to that Monday morning question of how do I actually teach this? First, just want to say that the website is one of these good bridges between research and practice, but it serves a lot of critical audiences beyond just educators, even though I'm speaking personally from the educator lens. State education agencies can use these progressions to inform standards development. District curriculum providers and coordinators can map and scope sequences across the levels, and standards writing committees can have validated learning outcomes that they can like start from when they're building theirs. And then another thing about the website is that accessibility was a non-negotiable for us. So there's no paywall for this. You don't need to attend a conference or have a training first. You can just go to the website, no matter your use case, and access everything that you need right there. And third, this is where it gets really exciting. This website is just the foundation of the work that we're doing. What you're going to see, it represents kind of phase one of a much larger vision. The learning progressions are kind of a cornerstone for this ecosystem that we're hoping to build out that we hope is going to continue to push the larger movement that's happening in the United States when it comes to data science education. So now that I've hyped it up, I am going to pass it off to Zarek to show you a little walkthrough of our website.
Awesome. So we're just so excited to share this with you all. And we're really, I think as Hannah said, this is the base, and in really many ways it's a skeleton, and we're going to continue to contribute to this over time. And we invite all of you to as well. We're looking for example classroom resources, lesson plans, modules that can enact some of these subjects and some of these ideas that are embedded in the framework. We're also hoping that you will give us feedback on the places that it can get better. We know it's not perfect yet. There are opportunities to improve throughout, and we hope that it will, improve and adapt over time. And so we're going to walk through a few ways of how those features are embedded here. Just to orient you all, so in general, the five major strands of the framework are outlined here. We have, strand A about those general dispositions, habits, and responsibilities as it comes to data, and then the four other areas around those techniques and practices to get it done. Right? These are where the investigation kind of staples live within the framework. Um, you can click into any one of these strands in order to access all the more granular concepts that are related to a particular strand. So I'm going to navigate into strand D, which is all about interpreting problems and results as it relates to data analysis. Within each strand, there are a couple major themes that help organize some of the major concepts. And so the three big ideas in Strand D are making and justifying claims related to data, problem identification, and question formation. And that's really about how to create like questions that can be tested with data, and how to set up a good question in order to lead to a broader analysis activity. And then finally, generalization, right? Does the data I have or does this conclusion I have drawn generalize to other contexts? Can it, based on the sample, based on the population, and the context of the data that you have in front of you? If we go into one of these substrands, that's where you can actually access the more granular concepts. And so, in making and justifying claims, we have ideas around probabilistic language, right? Using the ideas of probability in both plain language context, so being able to talk about likelihood of an event or phenomena, and also more technical vocabulary as it relates to describing the chance of a certain event. We also have, priors and updates. So for those of you who know statistics very well, this is where some of the ideas around Bayesian statistics enters into the framework in a really ideally plain language and accessible way. Um, we also have ideas around statistical significance, sampling and simulation, correlation, causation. If you are excited to explore any of these individual ideas more deeply with your students, you can click into any of these concepts and see age-appropriate, target learning outcomes written out grade by grade. And you can just swap through the individual grade spans by clicking across them horizontally. And then I think most importantly, let's say that you are a ninth grade teacher looking for ways to teach your students how to use probabilistic language in context. Well, there are both lesson plans that are aggregated here on the right, and we already have a few example lesson plans uploaded for a number of the concepts throughout the framework at most of the grade levels. And they're both PDFs, classroom tips, and also over time we hope to add instructional examples via video. So there'll be example YouTube videos of like how to enact this idea in the classroom at your grade level. Separate from that, on the left, right under the main learning competency text is an opportunity to share feedback. And so if you're thinking, I tried this out, I really think this language could be improved. I don't like the way that this idea is described. I have an idea to how to do it better. You can click the share feedback button and you can leave just a little bit of information for how you think that concept or idea should be improved. And so we're hoping that over time we'll aggregate lots of feedback across all the concepts by grade level, as well as create, a really extensive library of vetted, example lesson plans and resources to enact some of these ideas in the classroom. A few other major features of the website that I just wanted to highlight briefly. If you're like, oh my God, this is all way too much, I can't dive into all this immediately. We have a couple getting started guides up here at the top, which includes, an example set of 5 basic concepts for teachers to try out if you're totally brand new to data science, and some example lesson prompts that might be helpful for you to try out with your students. We also have a few guide documents down here at the bottom that go in depth around, what's happening next for the learning progressions. What does this look like in 2026 or 2027 as we build out even more granular guidance for, each school subjects, whether you're a math or science or social studies teacher, how to prioritize the progressions. And, again, where some of those like heavy hitting concepts that Shay alluded to are available to help, take this really long list of ideas and winnow it down to, oh, maybe I could start with these like top 10 that really matter throughout and supported a lot of those ideas that the community voted on initially. And then finally, if you're like, I don't want a digital click-through resource and I just want to see the whole thing in one, PDF, and I really want to just be able to print it out so I can mark it up, use a pen or a highlighter. We also have a download center where you can access all of the progressions either as a full suite or just targeted to a particular grade span. You can download them as a PDF or as a spreadsheet. So those are some of the basic features in here. The last thing to call out is that I think as of today, if you have an idea about data science or you've heard a concept, right? For instance, like I just want to know more about correlation causation. You can type this into the search bar at the top and bring up the concepts that relate to correlation causation. And it looks like I have to actually use the verses to get to pull up. Over time, we're going to add even more in-depth search feature. So it searches all of the text and all the underlying competency language that is underneath every single concept. And so, if you search for a word of sample, you will not only get the concepts that are named sample bias or sample size, but you'll find anywhere where that idea is showing up related to other concepts throughout the framework underneath as well. So we'll be adding that feature in the coming weeks. But with that brief walkthrough, I'll hand it back to Hannah, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for questions at the end in case you all want to dive into this. The last thing I'll say is just we put, we try to build as many features as helpful as possible into the site. If you have additional ideas, please reach out to us. Tell us how this could be more useful for you. Tell us how it could be better for your context.
Awesome. Okay, so you just got a quick overview of what the site looks like and how to navigate it a little bit. So I'm just going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the resources that you might have just seen in passing, because while having access to the framework is obviously crucial, um, there are a lot of us out there that might need a little bit more than that to feel confident just walking into their classroom and actually implementing some of the stuff that you've just seen. So that's why I'm excited to share some of the things that we've created to help with that. The first is what we're calling the Data Science Starter Kit. This isn't just a collection of lesson plans. This is a resource that's designed for anyone who wants to be able to understand and implement the data science learning progressions that they just saw, and however they want to use them, from state level to the classroom. The starter kit kind of meets you wherever you're at in the journey. You can navigate on like the left-hand panel. You can go by module. You can get just general overview of what data science is. It provides multiple entry points. So whether you're excited to like look for specific classroom examples, or you can see some videos of professionals and other educational leaders who are successfully implementing data science education, those are all filtered in through there. Has some teachers talking about classroom realities. But this resource is designed to take anyone from like the I'm curious about data science education to I now understand how this fits into the broader educational goals that I have. And that's kind of the goal there. Additionally, the site also houses several lesson plans. You might have seen them for teachers who want to see what a certain concept looks like in a classroom. So for example, I've pulled up just this little snapshot of concept A1.1, which is data types and forms. The learning progression shows us that students should recognize that data can exist as quantitative, ordinal, categorical, and other values. And importantly, the data can come from non-traditional forms like photographs, written text, audio recordings, things that people don't typically think of as data. But maybe if you're a K-2 teacher and you read this, you might be thinking, cool. What does that look like for a 5 or 6 year old? Luckily, the site does break it down by grade level. For K2, students need to be able to utilize both categorical and numeric data and understand that data can come from many sources, such as photographs or written text, from people or from non-traditional places you're not thinking of. And that's where that bridge to practice becomes real. On the website, you can see we have resources to help you do this. So, for example, if you click into the K2 grade band and look on the right-hand side, you'll see this K2 sorting toys lesson plan. And this is a fully built out lesson plan, step by step, to introduce students to data collection, organization, and analysis through a hands-on survey about toy preferences, which 5 and 6 year olds definitely care about. They can bring in their favorite toy and they can learn to categorize data based on, shape or size or type. They can create visual representations and they can draw conclusions from their findings in a fun way. So instead of just reading that students should be able to utilize categorical data, teachers can see exactly how that works. Students sorting toys into categories, surveying their classmates about preferences, creating charts. It's the same learning objective that you have probably been doing in your classroom anyway, but it's tangible and doable and related to the learning progressions. Um, and we would love feedback on the lessons that are there, or if you're doing something in your classroom that's been working really well, you can also submit a resource so we can put those on the website so that other teachers can utilize something that you know is really working. So we're really hoping to build that community there. Okay, moving on a little bit to our vision moving forward. Everything that we've shown you so far, the learning progressions website, the starter kit, the lesson plans, they're all foundational pieces, but our vision doesn't stop there. We are not just looking for some resources or one website. We are building the infrastructure for something much more powerful. And for me specifically, looking for a teacher-led ecosystem for data science education and pushing that movement forward. So we have a few ideas that we're working on at Data Science for Everyone to get that started. And the first one is what we're calling the Data Hub. This is going to be an extensive resource library, but it is a lot different than the ones that are currently out there. And almost none of them exist for data science specifically across the content areas, because this one will be organized for how teachers think and how teachers plan for things that go in their classroom. So instead of teachers having to learn our framework first, we can meet them where they're at using the Data Hub. A fourth grade teacher might not quite be at the stage where they're like thinking about the data science aspect to teaching measurement and number analysis. So instead, they can go to the Data Hub and they can search measurement and discover activities with data sets and lesson plans where students can collect data. Maybe it's local environment data about air quality readings, temperature patterns, rainfall accumulation measurements, and they can analyze the results and then ideally create some collaboration. Maybe they go down the hall and they talk to the science teacher who's covering ecosystems, and suddenly students aren't learning about measurement in isolation in one classroom and then forgetting it when they walk into a different door. They're using math skills to understand their local environment, make predictions, and present findings even to their school or administrators or to their peers about playground equipment for their environment or best layout suited to their ecosystem. And this is teachers teaching what they know best, just with powerful new tools and a new lens that can help students see how these learning concepts across subjects aren't just trapped in traditional silos and they actually are really cross-curricular. Um, and this isn't just about creating resources for teachers. This is also about teachers creating and leading together. So we're developing a network of data fellows. This is going to start by a group of teachers who have figured out how to make this work in their classrooms. And we're going to take those, we're going to champion them to mentor other educators, help schools and districts navigate implementation of data science education and how the different models like that can look. And most importantly, they can create resources based on what actually works with real students, elevate their voices, and share with the broader educator ecosystem. Because let's be honest, the best curriculum innovations don't typically come from organizations. They come from the boots on the ground teachers who have figured out how to teach bird immigration patterns through data analysis, or the elementary teacher who discovered that kids love serving their lunch preferences. And that's a great way to learn about graphs. The most powerful professional development doesn't happen when teachers, are just getting talked at. It's usually happens when teachers are learning from other teachers because they know the relevance of it into their classroom and they have the respect for someone who's been in the system. So we're going to build platforms that are going to make those connections a little bit more tangible. We're going to have educator networks where teachers can share their successes, troubleshoot challenges together, and co-create resources. A high school chemistry teacher in Ohio might be able to collaborate with a middle school science teacher in Texas because they're both trying to incorporate data in their labs and they're not really sure how. So we're just hoping to provide the infrastructure to help those collaborations exist, and allowing teachers to provide the expertise, creativity, and the leadership in a sphere that they know and love. So this is a little bit of our ecosystem that we're building. It's really centered not around the resources, even though resources is something that we are really, really excited to be able to give educators who are overworked and might not have the time. But it's mostly about building the relationships. So it's less content and it's more community. And it's led by teachers because you guys know it the best. And so with that, I'll take it to Sam, who's going to talk about her audience.
So some of you guys have maybe looked at the learning progressions already, probably know that they're currently written with more of a mathematics and computer science lens, but these concepts are actually universal. The ability to understand, analyze, and use data is critical in every field, and the learning progressions is explicitly designed to be embedded and incorporated into any content area. So to provide additional supports, we are actively working on phase two of the learning progressions. This involves creating direct alignment to existing national standards, and additional content areas will have specific guidance. We're assuming K through 12 mathematics, science, and social studies are going to be the priority disciplines for integration of data analysis techniques and problem solving methods. Though work in computer science and English will align additional techniques, with computer science providing an even deeper technology toolkit and ELA providing deeper engagement with clearer communication techniques for technical or quantitative ideas. Oops. While this alignment work is still in development, we also want to show you that the connections are actually already there, especially if you're interested in diving in right now. Here are just a few preliminary examples of how a concept from the learning progressions are directly supporting an existing national standard in various subjects. So in science, with the next gen science standards for analyzing and interpreting data, it's a perfect fit for our concept of analyzing variability. In social studies, with the C3 framework focus on developing claims and using evidence, this aligns directly with the skills of arguing with data. And in ELA's Common Core, a standard about reasoning with evidence from informational text is fundamentally an exercise in evaluating data-based arguments. And Math's Common Core, the core practice of modeling with mathematics, is brought to life through the data science skill of creating data visualizations, and that's turning numbers into a comprehensible model. So our phase two work is about making these implicit connections explicit and easy for you to implement.
Awesome. Well, so we have a little bit of extra time, and we thought we would take any questions that folks might have about the resources we developed, what content and frameworks actually exist in this larger body of work that we are releasing, and how you can engage. And so Sam and Hannah just showed a couple examples of both how educators and state leaders can likely both best benefit from the resources that have been developed by the community over the past 2 years to build this framework out. But we'd love to help answer any clarifying questions, next steps, or even hear any feedback. If you all are looking for, I really wish this existed, or I really wish that thing existed, we'd love to hear from you. So we'll give a few minutes for any questions if folks want to come off of mute, especially if you want to use your Zoom hands to help navigate questions, but you could take it that way. Or if you think of anything you'd like to share in the chat, we'd also take any questions if you want to share those virtually over here over Zoom. And as folks are considering questions, or if you don't have any, that's also totally good. Good. We just like really encourage you all to jump into the website and play with it. I think the best way to learn is to play, is to get your hands on something. And so we would love for you all to take a few minutes to just dive into the website, play with some of these ideas yourself, see what might relate or might resonate for your students in your school context. And if you have ideas or if you have, again, feedback, we'd love to hear and see your input uploaded into the site because our hope is that we can build really a community and a clear channel to make this work better over time. Um, okay, Zach, yeah, I saw you had a question.
So, kind of a compound question. I'm an assistant principal in New York City, and I'm about to become a district mathematics director in the next month or so. So this is near and dear to my heart in a number of ways. So two questions. One, there are a couple of different like data science curricula out there already. I'm thinking of things like Coursera or data science in a box or a couple of different resources out there. To what extent do these learning progressions or will these learning progressions align with some already existing curricula, or like is there going to be a curricula or sequence developed because The other thing, and this is a particularly like New York City, New York State thing, maybe, or an East Coast thing. They're redefining high school graduation requirements. They're soliciting ideas for like new schools and new credentials. And so I'm wondering kind of like how the ecosystem will build out and, you know, is there going to be something kind of, I don't know, a little more packaged, maybe a little less organic so that when I'm selling to the powers that be, like I can point them to something that's a little more fleshed out. I apologize for putting you on the spot with what is probably a very big question, but I'm just trying to figure out like how do I tell folks who I report to at the district level? You know, I went to a great data science workshop and they're going to be like, okay, do we have a sequence? Do we have a course? Do we have a credential? What do you have? And I'm going to be like, we have some learning progressions. So I'm wondering if you have like anything more or specific curriculum you'd suggest or something.
Yeah, for sure. One, don't apologize for the question. Wonderful question. I think it's actually really good to highlight this. So I want Hannah and Sam to both jump in on this question, and for you all to share your takes. I think my like just like quick remark is that I think the high school courses so like a course kata, Introduction to Data Science, the UQ high school course. Bootstraps, full year course package, all those are more integrated. You can chop those up into individual modules if you like. Those are really like the off the shelf, course options that are available today with associated professional development. And I think the learning progressions provide a ramp up to that fourth year course elective if you like to integrate that as a capstone course. And this is providing the next wave of integrated learning by school subject. As students work through everything up to that 12th grade or that 11th grade course elective. But Hannah or Sam, maybe Hannah, do you want to first talk about the curriculum resources and sort of the rubrics that we developed for sharing some of those off the source content, and then Sam maybe just to briefly on the state standards and how that could relate here.
Yeah, I apologize. I like cannot find the chat, but I have a colleague dropping a link in the chat that specifically talks about, oh, it popped back up. Now I see it. Oh yeah, so I dropped a link in the chat that has just a quick overview of like if you want to implement data science in your classroom and you're trying to sell it to the district, here is like the how, what, and why. It lists a bunch of the content partners that we work with, and it tells you about like the different ways that you can implement it, whether you want a full course, whether you want to do a modular integration approach. And so I think that's a good starting place. And looking at those people that we work with pretty closely, we have vetted their resources and can also like get you in contact with them. We have a team that will work with schools as they're trying to implement data science in the classroom. And then the resources that are on the website, um, we are starting with, maybe 30 at the moment, but we're hoping to build those out more and more and more so that any teacher can go in and not only have like one just example, I guess, to see when they're looking through for that content, but could even kind of pick and choose like, oh, this one is about aquatic animals and this one is about candy. Like, which one is going to be more exciting to my students? And so I think like this is kind of the ground floor in terms of educator resources where we're starting, and we're just kind of shooting up from there.
Yeah, and at least from the standards perspective, at the moment we don't have the documents or the guidance that align directly to the national standards just yet. Of course, that's part of our phase 2 work, but it's not difficult to find a lot of those connections. I'm not sure what grade bands you're specifically working with, but getting a group of educators together and then just looking at the learning progressions themselves, especially for elementary teachers, is really going to be powerful because that it kind of almost brings together multiple content areas together, especially for elementary teachers who aren't as confident in teaching mathematics. This is kind of their door in to help them build that confidence. With kind of your middle and high school educators, we find that stats and probability in a textbook is always at the end, right? So this is a great and phenomenal way to maybe incorporate more stats and probability with the data science concepts and some of those other algebraic functions and some of those other mathematic concepts. So It's just a matter of giving them time to explore and seeing where those connections already exist.
Thank you.
Okay, before we wrap up, I do want to just do a quick plug. Holy smokes, is this next week? Yes, next week I host office hours. So if anyone was inspired by what they saw today, and they want to talk a little bit more in detail about it, or you want to workshop with me a way that we can get a concept or several into your classroom in the next month, please use the QR code here and sign up to come visit. Usually I have just a handful of people, so we can be pretty uh, one-on-one, and I can ideally, my goal is that everyone leaves walking away with something that they can use.
So, well, wanted to say a huge thank you for you all taking the time to come out and talk about this topic. Please make sure, well, one, sign up for Hannah's office hours if you're interested in integrating some of these concepts into your school or district context. And then two, make sure you're following Data Science for Everyone community channels to learn more about other webinars and other professional learning opportunities from either our own
What's
team or
up?
from the many curriculum and content partners that we work with. And please don't miss next month's webinar, which will be the State of Data Science Education 2025, where we are and where we're going, happening on November 12th. We hope to see you there. And you can also register now by following the link that Shay just dropped in the chat. Um, and we'd also just linked our Slack, newsletter, LinkedIn, and Twitter. All those communities are pretty active, but I would say Slack is probably the most active one for community tips. And then our newsletter gets pushes all the updates related to K-12 data science education that we can possibly find and scrub from the internet and our partners to share back with you all. And then finally, just a final plug that we have, of course, our existing resource center that has many of the high school courses and some of the other off-the-shelf example, instructional materials for K-12 data science education. And we'll be working over the next several months to migrate some of those resources to the learning progression site to see the alignment between the two. So that's even tighter for there's tighter alignment for y'all to be able to integrate them easily. Well, with that, thank you all so much. It was so great seeing you all. And please don't hesitate to reach out if we can be helpful with anything whatsoever. Hope you all have a great evening.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.